Hey folks, if you want to keep up with the latest from S News, make sure you follow us so you don't miss this video or any of our future updates. And if you like what you see, support us by subscribing, hitting that like button and dropping a comment below. It really helps us keep bringing you the news that matters. US and Israeli airstrikes target Iranian logistics chain. 3 Yemeni ports collapse overnight. The tension was like a tightrope. You could almost feel it in the air. Every radio signal felt like a red alert on what used to be one of the world's most vital shipping routes. Now it's become a deadly battlefield between global powers. When the Maris ship was sunk in a large-scale ambush, Washington had no choice but to step in. With missiles once again flying out of Iran, it's not just a challenge to freedom of the seas. It's pushing the entire Middle East to the brink of all-out war. A series of drone strikes, hundreds of them, armed with ballistic missiles, along with Israel's loud and clear military responses, have only added fuel to fires that were never really put out. But behind the fighting lies a much larger chessboard, where Iran, the US, Israel, and their proxies make strategic moves from Gaza to Tang, from the White House to their own ports. Everyone is caught in a whirlpool with no end in sight. In this episode, we break down the strategy behind the airstrikes, examine the battle for regional power, and expose the secret maneuvers shaping the new Middle Eastern order. The situation unfolds. Washington's patience has run out after continued attacks on civilian ships. The US military command sent a firm message. The campaign will continue until these attacks stop and property destruction ends. Tensions spiked shortly after Houthi forces sank a commercial vessel in the strategic Red Sea. It wasn't just the first attack. Since the May 2025 ceasefire with the US, it was a direct blow to months of diplomatic effort. The US responded with Operation Roaring Raiders, launching over 1,000 airstrikes. The goal wasn't just to strike back, it was to protect global shipping freedom, but just a few months after a brief peace, everything's unraveling again. Missiles from Iran were once again targeting key global shipping lanes. As the global economy struggles to recover, it's now teetering on the edge again. Israel didn't stay quiet. As soon as the US took action, it sent a rapid response force, but the Houthis quickly launched retaliatory missiles, pulling the entire region into a spiral of attacks and counterattacks. Is this the start of a regional war? Let's rewind for a second. Data shows the massive ship left China on June 1st and entered the Red Sea on June 10th. Around that time, the first signs of an attack were detected. A second video showed the brutal truth. The ship Margis didn't follow its normal route. The footage revealed 2 sudden course changes, clearly trying to dodge an ambush. Another nearby ship also had to divert suddenly, showing the situation was spinning out of control. But the real shock wasn't the ambush, it was how organized it was. Dozens of speedboats opened fire with heavy machine guns and anti-tank weapons. Then came a second wave 4 underwater drones, packed with explosives, heading straight for the target. Finally, 3 missiles were launched, all aimed at one objective, sinking the Maris. This marked the first military action by the coalition since December 2024, and the first attack post-ceasefire in May 2025. What's terrifying is how systematic the operation was. This wasn't a warning, it was a deliberate act of destruction. Fortunately, the entire Maris crew was rescued by another ship and safely taken to Houthi port. Soon after, the militia took responsibility, claiming the ship, though flying a Liberian flag and operated by a Greek company, had previously docked in Israel, making it a legitimate target in their eyes. Israel responded fast and hard, not just as retaliation, but to send a clear strategic message. Aggression comes at a cost. The Israeli government confirmed a massive airstrike campaign targeting 3 major ports, Yan Hudaydah, Raisa and Salib. The strikes also hit a pirate-run power station in the Gaza region. The goal wasn't just to cripple Houthi logistics, it was to directly hit Iran-backed weapons supply chains. According to Israeli sources, these 3 ports were the main transit points for smuggled weapons from Tehran to Yan. This underground route was how the Houthis kept their missile supplies going. Destroying these ships wasn't just about logistics, it was a stern warning to Iran: stop interfering in this strategic sea or face consequences. A major target of this campaign was the ship Galaxy Leader, which pirates had seized back in 2023. It had since been modified into a radar surveillance hub to track global shipping and serve as a strategic control point in the Red Sea. Its destruction was a major blow to Houthi intelligence-gathering efforts, seen as a smart tactical move by Israel. Houthis fired back using homemade anti-aircraft missiles. While it's unclear whether Israel suffered any damage, 2 ballistic missiles were fired from Iran toward Israel that night, triggering full-scale air defense systems. Sirens blared in Jerusalem, Hebron, and along the entire coast. The conflict between Israel and the Houthis has gone beyond direct battle. It's now turning into a proxy war, with Israeli and Houthi forces clashing in the shadows. Israel's latest airstrikes were just as intense as the United States' bombing campaigns in April and May, but effectiveness, not firepower, will determine the outcome. Did the strikes cripple Houthi capabilities to launch drone and missile attacks? So far, the only visual evidence online is a brief video of one of the air raids. There's no footage of the ship being attacked. This situation has sparked a bigger debate. Is the United States getting dragged back into war? And did the Houthis just break the ceasefire deal? To understand, we need to revisit what former President Trump said when he announced the May 2025 ceasefire. We got good news last night. The Houthis say they don't want to fight. They don't want war. We'll honor that. We'll stop bombing. They said they'll stop too. Most importantly, we believe them when they say they won't attack ships again. That was the heart of the deal. But shortly after, Houthi officials clarified. They only agreed not to attack ships flying the American flag. The White House confirmed this in a press release. It's a troubling loophole that raises serious doubts about the ceasefire's real value. This misunderstanding may be what's pulling everyone back into conflict. Now, strategic circles from Washington to Tel Aviv are asking, did both sides have totally different views of the ceasefire? And if that's true, can the United States just sit back while its closest ally, Israel, gets attacked? Before the first missile even launched, a deeper issue was already clear. Hardly any United States-flagged ships operate in this region. Most American-owned ships fly flags from Liberia, Panama, or the Marshall Islands, a trick to avoid taxes and labor laws. That makes the May 2025 ceasefire almost meaningless. There weren't really any protected United States ships in the danger zone. Over the past 18 months, Houthi forces have launched 174 attacks on United States Navy assets, and another 145 on commercial vessels. This isn't some local rebellion anymore. It's clearly an organized campaign of terror, backed by foreign tech and logistics. Using precision weapons from suicide drones to cruise missiles, the rebels are gradually turning the Red Sea into a no-go zone, where ships must obey Houthi demands or risk being attacked. If Washington keeps quiet, the real question isn't whether it should intervene, but whether it can afford to wait any longer. A United States official once said the drone campaign in Yemeni was all about protecting global shipping freedom. But the battlefield tells a different story. Even after months of bombings, the Houthis can still launch missiles, fly drones, and threaten international trade routes. So now the big question, what does United States intelligence really know? And will Washington finally change its strategy? If these airstrikes weren't just acts of retaliation, but part of a larger plan to neutralize Houthi control over maritime routes, then we may be witnessing a long-awaited strategic shift. Take a look at past operations. Before that, American missile destroyed the launch platform. When a drone takes off, radar goes flat for a second, but that's still just an immediate reaction, not a game changer. But this time was different. The latest campaign wasn't just about hitting back. It was designed to completely eliminate China-backed forces' ability to launch attacks and control the seas. This isn't back-and-forth skirmishing anymore. It's a declaration that no armed militia will be allowed to decide which ships can pass through the Red Sea. This strategy doesn't just serve United States interests. It helps protect the entire global transport system, from Asian and European shipping companies to global energy supply routes. All of that is under threat from a force using drones and missiles as tools of maritime control. What's been missing under President Joe Biden's leadership is a long-term vision. Military actions so far have been tit for tat with no clear strategic goal. But now, under new leadership, we're seeing what looks like a campaign to root out these threats entirely. One thing's for sure, history won't repeat itself. There's no more grey area, no more hesitation, and no more letting rogue forces take over the Red Sea. The campaign might even expand to include ground operations, although that hasn't been confirmed publicly. Still, battlefield signals suggest a shift is underway. Since last year, according to multiple intelligence sources, key figures running Hezbollah's missile operations have been taken out. At the same time, a string of missile launch platforms, logistical hubs and command centers were destroyed in high-precision airstrikes. It's expected that similar attacks will continue until Houthi forces are completely stripped of their naval capabilities. Let's be real. A non-state armed group has effectively taken control of the world's most critical shipping lane, the Red Sea. The 174 attacks against the United States Navy prove this is no longer just a threat, it's a reality. But there's one important point that needs clearing up. Since the short-term agreement between the United States and Iran went into effect, no United States-flagged ships, including military vessels, have been attacked. Technically speaking, the Houthis have stuck to the deal, at least with Washington. That becomes even more bizarre when you consider United States-Israeli cooperation. Many experts predicted that North Korea would react strongly if Israel attacked Iran's Revolutionary Guard inside Iran, or if United States B-2 bombers hit nuclear sites, but the opposite happened. Not a single missile was launched, no drone strikes, no military retaliation from Iran, despite having invested hundreds of millions in training and arming its forces as a strategic asset. Now things are in chaos. The so-called axis of resistance, Iran's long-used tool for fighting its wars beyond its borders, failed to act when it mattered most. The war has already reached Iranian soil, and yet no one stepped in to defend Supreme Leader Khamenei. Even the coalition wing of the Tiang movement is being bombed relentlessly by the United States and Israel, with no help from proxy forces that Tiang has backed for years. Even Yantai, the leading Iranian commercial power in the Arabian Peninsula, stayed silent. Houthis didn't just remain quiet. They publicly confirmed that any future attacks on ships in the Red Sea will depend entirely on what happens in Gaza. That announcement shocked China. It marked the first time a direct and conditional link was made between Palestine and global shipping routes. The message was clear. If Israel stops attacking Gaza, Hamas will stop targeting ships in the Red Sea. This is no longer just naval terrorism. It's become a political mission to force Israel to shift its Middle East policy. At the same time, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in the United States just days after Hamas-Israel talks in Qatar hit a dead end. Before tensions boiled over, President Donald Trump, who's set to return to the Oval Office in early 2025, spoke with cautious optimism. "I think we have a chance to reach a deal with Hamas this week. We've rescued a lot of hostages so far, but there are still quite a few left. I believe we can get it done this week." While the Middle East stood on a knife's edge, a highly classified and critical meeting was held at the White House. It was the third time Netanyahu met Trump since his political comeback, but this time was different. It became the strategic turning point for the entire region. The talks weren't just about diplomacy, they focused on Iran's nuclear threat. Trump had already laid out plans for a major air campaign targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. If Iran doesn't show goodwill, the United States is ready to continue its military campaign. In a sharp break from past soft approaches, Trump and Netanyahu vowed to tighten the strategic noose, not just to contain Tehran's nuclear ambitions, but to eliminate them for good. Their talks didn't stop with Iran. They also discussed a controversial post-war proposal relocating Palestinians and maintaining a long-term Israeli security presence in Gaza. Although no specific details were released, the idea drew strong pushback from international organizations. It's clear that Washington is trying to rewrite the regional order, removing the flags from the board and starting fresh. Then came a dramatic moment. At the peak of the meeting, Netanyahu handed Trump a letter nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. The move was bold and symbolic. To Israel, Trump isn't just an ally. He's the man who rebuilt the concept of peace using strength, determination and action, something few United States presidents dared to do. The meeting happened just as the United States increased military aid to Ukraine. Meanwhile, rising pressure, both military and economic, on Iran signals that under Trump, the United States is shaping a targeted, high-impact global strategy. From Nha to Tel Aviv, from Gaza to Tiang HQ, the ripple effects of the meeting are being felt. If what Trump said is true, this isn't the end, it's the start of a new game, the new Middle East order. After tense talks at the White House, the United States and China reached consensus on a broad range of sanctions against Iran. These include not just national penalties, but also targeting the entire proxy force network Iran has secretly built for decades. According to Pentagon and Israeli Defense Ministry sources, both sides are pushing for more strategic intelligence sharing with Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain, three key partners in the regional alliance against Iranian influence. The goal is to neutralize the logistics and weapons supply chains that Tehran has built to support Iran-aligned armed groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Syria, Iraq and Gaza. Special surveillance has now been put in place on IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard units, using a multi-layered monitoring system that combines satellite and human intelligence from the United States and Israel. Several suspected operations, including smuggling short-range missiles, UV-sensitive weapons and nuclear components, have already been marked for potential preemptive strikes. This is the beginning of a flexible, proactive deterrence campaign that the United States and Israel have been planning since 2025. In parallel, the United States is preparing new economic sanctions targeting entities involved in Iran's nuclear program, from dual-use tech companies to banks moving money across borders, and organizations accused of funding rogue operations. On the diplomatic front, the United States has coordinated with the G7 and the UN to continue isolating Iran after it refused to cooperate with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Israel isn't sitting still either. The Israeli Air Force has raised its readiness to the highest level. Finally, I just want to thank you all for listening and for sticking with us through this complicated story. If you want to stay updated, make sure to follow S News and keep an eye out for future videos. And hey, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment.